Have you ever promised yourself that tomorrow would be different? That you would wake up early, focus, and finally start building the life you keep thinking about? And yet, when the alarm rings, your hand reaches for the snooze button almost without permission. Minutes turn into hours, and when you finally wake up, the day already feels lost. You tell yourself the same excuse again, "I'm not a morning person." But what if that belief is the very thing holding your life hostage? This is not a story about waking up early for discipline alone. This is a story about how one ordinary man rewrote his destiny by reclaiming the quietest hours of the day before the world began to demand anything from him. In a mid-sized American manufacturing town outside Cleveland, Ohio, lived a 35-year-old man named Ethan Miller. Ethan worked the night shift as a warehouse security officer. From 9 p.m. to 6 a.m., he walked concrete floors under fluorescent lights, listening to machines hum and alarms beep. His paycheck barely covered rent for his small studio apartment, groceries, and gas. There was no room for mistakes, savings, or dreams. His apartment reflected his reality: an old couch someone had left by the dumpster, a folding table, and a mattress on the floor. The heat struggled in winter, and the silence felt heavier than the darkness. But the worst part wasn't the lack of money. It was the feeling that life was passing him by. Every morning, as Ethan drove home while the sun rose, he saw people starting their days. Coffee shops opening, parents walking kids to school, office lights turning on. It felt like everyone else was moving forward while he was fading into the background. He often wondered, is this it? Is this all my life is ever going to be? Ethan wasn't lazy. He showed up every night. He stayed alert. He did his job well. But no matter how hard he worked, nothing changed. Hard work without direction was keeping him stuck. By the time he reached his bed at 7 a.m., exhaustion swallowed him whole. He slept through daylight, through opportunity, through possibility. Then, one winter morning, everything shifted. Ethan received a call from his younger sister just as his shift ended. Their father had been rushed to the hospital after collapsing at work. The doctor said stress and years of physical labor had taken their toll. Sitting beside his father's bed later that morning, Ethan felt something unfamiliar rise in his chest. Not fear, but clarity. His father had worked hard his entire life, yet still struggled. Ethan suddenly realized he was walking the same road, just at a different time of day. When he stepped outside the hospital, the clock on his phone read 5:07 a.m. The streets were quiet. The air was cold and still. A few joggers passed by. Delivery trucks moved silently through intersections. The world felt paused, as if it were holding its breath. And for the first time in years, Ethan wasn't tired. He was awake in a different way. Later that morning, on the bus ride back to his apartment, Ethan noticed a man sitting across from him. Calm, well-dressed, reading a book with deep focus. Ethan recognized him as Daniel Brooks, a local entrepreneur who owns several small businesses in town. Curious, Ethan struck up a conversation. Daniel smiled and mentioned that he had been awake since 4:45 a.m. He explained that the early morning hours were sacred to him, time for learning, planning, and self-improvement before distractions arrived. Ethan laughed bitterly and said he worked nights and slept mornings. Daniel listened carefully, then said something that landed like a truth Ethan couldn't ignore. If you're asleep while the world is building, you'll always feel behind. Daniel explained that success wasn't about talent or luck. It was about controlling your time, especially the first hours of the day. He called the period between 5 a.m. and 7 a.m. the most powerful window for personal growth. That's when the mind is clear, willpower is strongest, and excuses are weakest. Ethan doubted it would work for him. Daniel didn't argue. Instead, he offered a practical adjustment. Sleep when you get home. Wake up earlier than feels comfortable. Give yourself just 2 intentional hours a day. Do that consistently, and your life will change. Daniel wrote his number on a receipt and told Ethan to call if he was serious. That word, serious, echoed in Ethan's mind. The next morning, Ethan did something radical. He set his alarm for 5 a.m. and placed his phone across the room. When it rang, every part of him wanted to quit, but he remembered his father's tired face in the hospital bed. He stood up anyway. The first week was brutal. His body protested. His mind created excuses. But every morning he forced himself to sit at his folding table with a laptop. From 5 to 6 a.m. he studied. Online courses, spreadsheets, basic accounting, skills that could change his economic future. From 6 to 7 a.m. he moved his body and planned his day. No scrolling, no distractions, just progress. After 2 weeks, something unexpected happened. Waking up early stopped feeling painful. His mind became sharper. He started understanding concepts that once felt intimidating. By the end of the first month, he completed his first certificate. By the second, he had built confidence. By the third, he applied what he learned at work, creating systems that saved time and reduced errors. People noticed. One afternoon, his supervisor asked where he learned these skills. Ethan simply said, "I changed how I use my mornings." That answer led to conversations. Those conversations led to opportunity. Within months, Ethan transitioned into a day role. Within a year, he doubled his income. But the most important change wasn't financial. It was internal. Ethan no longer felt trapped. He felt in control. Years later, Ethan still wakes up at 5 a.m., not because he has to, but because that time belongs to him. It's when he builds, reflects, and grows. He understands now that success isn't a single moment, it's a daily practice. So this story isn't really about Ethan, it's about you. The difference between where you are and where you want to be isn't motivation or luck, it's how you use the hours when the world is quiet. The early morning isn't magic because of the clock, it's magic because it's uninterrupted. So tonight, make a choice. Set your alarm. Decide what you will build. Protect your sleep. Commit for 90 days. Because if one ordinary man can change his life by waking up early and choosing discipline, so can you. The question isn't whether 5 a.m. works. The question is, will you? And hey, if this story kept you awake to the end, maybe hit like, share it with a friend who loves the snooze button, and stick around. More stories are coming.